Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Beyond the Credits. Today, we are going to be talking about. Today,
I've gone from that to that.
we are going to be deep diving on a topic of discussion that has come up. We've seen a lot recently, haven't we?
Yeah.
A lot of discourse around it on social media, especially. A few articles as well have been written about it, and it's basically, are the directors our modern day film stars?
Are they?
To summarize, yeah, are
What
they?
do you think on that?
I mean, just to summarize, it's kind of focused on the fact that nowadays, or in like back in the day when films were, when we had like huge blockbuster films, you needed the name to get people to come and watch it. The director purely wasn't enough. Whereas nowadays, a lot of people, regardless of the cast, would kind of see a director's name and think, oh, well, I'm obviously going to go and watch that.
Yeah.
A director's name holds a lot more weight than it used to.
Mm-hmm.
And it's an interesting topic of discussion because
Yeah.
some people disagree, some people agree, some people have different takes. So we're going to be discussing those today.
I think it's such an interesting topic to delve into because there's so many different elements and reasons as to why it is the case. I think we are fortunate to live in an age where we have quite a big bustling amount of directors who have established a name for themselves, and they've got such a distinct vision that they execute in a way that is second to none. I think you've got the likes of Nolan that come to mind. I mean, everyone is buzzing for the Odyssey, not because of Matt Damon. And he is rips, but that's not what's getting me going. That's not what's getting me excited, Matt Damon. I'm sorry, Jason Bourne. It's Nolan.
Yeah.
It is. You've got this is what really brought it to my attention a lot more, because you've got, like even Greta Gerwig's Narnia. Like, people are really so intrigued to see what they do with the style that they've already showed to us countless times that they have. And also when you've got people like Nolan who are making the likes of Oppenheimer, which was in my opinion a 10/10, like, how are they going to up it? So then you've got these titan names in the director field that are just constantly pushing the boundaries and surprising us, and people want to see what they do next because of that. Like, how could you top? How's PTA going to top one battle after another, and how's Nolan going to top Oppenheimer? That's just one reason. There's so many other reasons, but that kind of excitement in the end. Or same with like after Barbie, like Narnia. Like, well, she's gone from that to Narnia. Like, it's just so. It's grabbing everyone's attention. It's certainly grabbing mine. I do think that's one of the reasons as to why I think, how could you not want to behold their greatness?
Yeah, I mean, my opinion, I somewhat agree. Like you mentioned about the Christopher Nolan thing, like, I would go and see, I am going to see the Odyssey. It's hard because I am going to see it because Christopher Nolan has directed it, but I am also going to see it because he's got such a stacked cast. But then some people may argue, well, if Christopher Nolan wasn't directing it, would you have got such a stacked cast? And it's like, probably not. I think the thing is, for me, that you're going to get good quality films with these directors. You kind of see the likes of Greta Gerwig, Steven Spielberg, Christopher Nolan, Ryan Coogler, I think, has now become a bit of a force to be reckoned with within the directing world. I think you see these names and you think, okay, I know I'm going to get a good, entertaining, well-written, well-directed, well-edited, well put together as a whole film. And I think that's what people want nowadays. They don't want quantity, they want quality.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because I do think those big names still draw people in.
Oh, 100%.
However, you can argue it's flopped in the past. I mean, look at Margot Robbie.
Well,
Margot Robbie, A Big Bold Beautiful Journey. You had Colin Farrell and Margot Robbie at the helm of that. I saw that trailer and thought, oh my God, bit of me, Margot Robbie. It looks so cool. It was rubbish. It was so slow. It went out of
cinema after about 2 weeks. So I actually never ended up catching it. I was going to go and see it, but
it was boring.
It just goes to show me. I saw an article about the top 10 most bankable movie stars, whether you want to, there's a debate around whether the actual movie stars is what they once were is still in existence anymore, but top 10 most bankable names, Margot Robbie was in there. And although, yes, she's had Barbie, she's had Wuthering Heights, Two Smarts, like, they've done really, really well at the box office. Big Bold Beautiful Journey, like what you said, flopped.
Exactly.
So it's kind of like it's never
it's the same.
It's never a steady guarantee.
Yeah, and it's like same, even like a franchise nowadays can't, like, we've seen that. It's not like they're consistently scoring at the box office, because the Marvels,
Yeah.
that had a stacked cast, but that majorly flopped. Like, that's
Follow You Do.
completely been forgotten about.
Follow You Do. That didn't do that
Yeah,
well. I mean, I don't know whether that
exactly.
was in terms of money or like critically. I think it was both.
Yeah.
It kind of flops. But yeah, Gaga on paper, it's like Gaga, brilliant, especially after A Star Is Born. She's very sort of
Well, Joaquin Phoenix's Oscar win.
Yeah,
Like,
and he's
just
reprising
purely
his
off that,
role.
he won for that role, and he's reprising that Oscar winning role.
Yeah.
For lead actor. Yeah, you know, it wasn't drawing people in.
I
I think similarly with directors, though, you could argue, like, look at Christopher Nolan's Tenet. I thought that
Yeah.
was boring. I did not like it at all.
I'm not seeing it.
I do think COVID maybe did stunt its impact a little bit.
I've heard a lot of people say that they think Tenet's underrated.
Yeah, no,
Never seen it.
I thought it was boring. I thought, obviously, I got my head around it. Like, it is confusing. Of course, it's Christopher Nolan. He's never going to write it out plainly for you. But for me, it just didn't really hit. Same with Steven Spielberg, The Fabelmans. That only grossed $45 million at the box office and took home no Oscars, despite being nominated for 7. Again, it's kind of like, of course they're not gonna. It's not a guarantee that they're going to score every time with films, but you know, it's these big names. It's not a guarantee smash.
In the 50s and 60s, it was like, Audrey Hepburn's in a film? Oh, it's going to make a shit ton of money.
Exactly.
It's one of them things, and I do think, I mean, there are certain directors where, if in my book, I mean, Christopher Nolan could have the bloody Milkman in The Milkman's Wife as Anne Hathaway and Matt Damon. I wouldn't care, but you know, I do think, yeah, because he's got the notoriety that he has, he's got this stacked cast. And in that article that I mentioned prior about, you know, the most bankable movie stars of today, Zendaya and I believe Tom Holland were also in that. So, you know, there is still very much, I think in terms of our generation, there is that very much them sort of those figures that will get you to the cinema. Like, for example, I think with Wuthering Heights, all right, you will have had the literary lot. They would have been heading there for that. But you will have also had the Euphoria girlies that would have been heading for Jacob Elordi. Yeah. I would consider myself in both camps. So it's not to say that the power of the film star is sort of decimated entirely, but it doesn't hold that same sort of levity that it once did. Yeah. And I think there's so many reasons for that as well. I mean, another point I would say is that the sort of the eradication of the mystique. You know, there was one point, you know, where there's a reason, for example, there's a reason why you have documentaries about Marilyn, Elizabeth Taylor, Audrey, because we didn't have the same sort of know-how and understanding of them that we perhaps would have had today if they were alive today. Obviously, we have an entirely different media landscape that has meant that's the case. But I do think, you know, the mystique and the sort of the allure, like, of those old, you know, Hollywood film stars, even up until like perhaps the 90s. Like, you look at like from like the start of film, from Chaplin's day up until the 90s, I think you had that sort of, the film star was very much set in stone, sort of rooted in soil. They were a guaranteed moneymaker because there was not as much there was so much more mystique surrounding them. And in this current, you know, say the past 15, maybe 10, 15 years especially, you know, we know them on a level that we perhaps never have. And I don't want to say on a deeper level because we don't really know them, but they have so much more exposure. I think the fact that there's so much money being pumped into the marketing, that you see these people's faces here, there and everywhere, the fashion campaigns that some people are in, the media exposure that a lot of stars get now is like they've never had before. And it all boils down to what Denzel Washington said to Michael B. Jordan: who's gonna go and watch you in a film where they can go and see you on Instagram or something like that. Yeah. So there is something to be said for that, which is kind of an obvious point to make, but that's kind of not necessarily leaning into why directors are the new film stars as such, but why film stars aren't perhaps, they don't have the same sort of that phrase doesn't have as much weight as what it once did. Yeah, because I mean, just going back to what you said about like the 90s, like if you look at films like Notting Hill, I could not tell you, gun to my head, who directed that. I don't know. Because, you know, that has become such a success for film because, you know, you've got
Julia Roberts and Hugh Grant at the helm of it, and it's a very well written film. Yeah, it's well directed as well, but the director wasn't the forefront. It was Julia Roberts. That is same with most Julia Roberts films back in the
Yes.
Pretty Woman. Who directed that? We don't know.
Obviously,
Like,
you know who directed Pretty Woman was the same guy who directs Gary Marshall, who directed The Princess Diaries. But I only knew that because I stumbled upon it when I was reading about. Oh, it was a documentary. It was about the making of Pretty Woman. But I would never like. Oh, it's like a Gary Marshall film.
no,
It's just
exactly.
like-
But it's like Chicago. Chicago won the Oscar for. I'm just going off the films that I love, but Chicago won the Best Picture Oscar in 2002. Could you tell me who directed that? Like, I know it's Rob Marshall because Rob Marshall is a bit of a renowned, like, he directed like Mary Poppins Returns. Like, he loves a bit of a musical film, and I love that film. But like, that won Best Picture. Yeah, no, like, not many people could tell you that Rob Marshall directed that. Whereas nowadays, I mean, yeah, okay, it's fresh in our mind because it's only just happened, but who, you know, what won Best Picture at the Oscars 2026, one battle after another. Who was the director? Paul Thomas Anderson. You know, it's same with, but like, look at when Parasite won. You know, most people could probably tell you the director of Parasite.
Bong Joon-ho.
Bong Joon-ho. Papa.
Icon.
It's interesting, but I do think, yeah, like you say, the directors have a lot more of a name for themselves. They do become kind of, I feel like directors back in the day could go live quite an unknown life, couldn't they? They could go and direct a few films, but they stayed behind the scenes. Whereas now, yeah, but I think it's needed nowadays in such a saturated market. There's films coming out left, right, and centre. I think directors need to kind of put their face out there to get people to come and see the films. And
Yeah. And it does make you want to go and see it more.
When you hear, and I mean, you're the same as me. When you hear the director talk so passionately, like Christopher Nolan, I could literally listen to Christopher Nolan go through the whole back catalogue of his films because he's so passionate when speaking about it, and so, you know, there's so many different things that he picks out that you would never have picked up on.
Yes, and he's just masterful. I mean, and you can see that through his work, and you get that essence through him when he speaks. I've not seen his interview on Stephen Colbert yet, but I want to watch it. It's like 20-minute extended interview where he's talking about, you know, I've seen a few clips and he's talking about why the story of Homer in the Odyssey has so much like contemporary cultural relevance, and why it really has so many franchises like the Marvel and DC franchises, like modern day superhero flicks are so rooted in that particular story. And you, like, for example, you're excited anyway because it's a Christopher Nolan film, but when you look at the motivations behind why he is telling that specific story and why he thinks it has as much relevance as what it does, that's another thing that just grabs you entirely. You're invested in the story before you even watch it.
No, exactly.
So,
you are,
like,
because he's like, you know, he's talked about his creative process. And also, I watched an interview the other day. I think it was Emily Blunt talking. It was for the Devil Wears Prada press, but she brought up the fact that she's worked with Christopher Nolan, and she talked about being on set for Oppenheimer, and there was a day where maybe something wasn't going right completely, and she was just speaking to one of the crew members, and I think he was like maybe a rigger or something, like dealt with like the lighting rigs, and he was like, I just take all of the experience on this set, like just being here kind of means that you're probably one of the top 3 greatest people at your job in the world because you're on a Christopher Nolan movie.
Yeah.
And it just kind of shows, again, going back to what I said earlier, the quality of the films that these directors produce, because it is true. It's probably true. Christopher Nolan only works with the best because that shows in the quality of his films.
And he re-collaborates with so many people. I mean, look at his little love affair with Cillian Murphy.
Yeah.
There's been like 6 or 7 films, hasn't he? Yeah, and it's like I remember seeing an interview, like so many interviews for Oppenheimer, where it was constantly reiterated. Cillian Murphy literally said, like, he's like, Christopher Nolan's like, he expects like excellence, like everyone's on the game. There's no phones on set. And I think as well, like that no nonsense, get to work attitude is something that really will entice great actors, and not only big names but people who want to do the work. And there's an interview where he said, and it was like, God, I was thinking, Christopher Nolan, he's a grafter, because Cillian Murphy said a lot of his films come in on time and under budget. Like, he's very efficient with time and money. And I think he's got it down. Yeah, it's just so everything. Like I'm mentioning Nolan as I assume you are as well, because the Odyssey trailer came out, literally the full-fledged trailer
Yeah.
came out a couple of days ago. So excited for it. And yeah, I mean, even down to like people are craving, I think in this day and age, this is another point I've kind of meandered upon. I think in this day and age, there's a lot of, we are in a digital age that makes us feel, it kind of tricks us into thinking that we're more unified and more together than we are apart. But that's actually kind of a falsehood in a way, because social media, although you're constantly presented with what everyone's got having for breakfast and what everyone's doing with their lives,
Yeah.
it actually is a more isolating force. And you know, that's a fact. I mean, that's not something that I don't think really needs to be debated. But I think because of that, and because of the media landscape, and the fact that we are not having really the same kind of human interactions that we once were having, and we've lost that sense of community and connection, not fully eradicated, but it's not the same as what it once was in Western society as a whole. You're kind of craving voices that are so distinct and so willing and so wanting to communicate the fully fledged reality of what it is to be a human. And I think that's why Barbie did well for so many reasons, but I think there's a massive element of Barbie really touching upon so many things that I think elements of womanhood that we all kind of needed to be reminded of. And Greta Gerwig, for example, is one director who has such a distinct voice and is willing to communicate and wants to communicate something so sort of rich and interesting to you, that I think as viewers you're craving that sense of that kind of content. You're craving them kind of stories, because you're not really having those experiences in everyday life, for example, that remind you of life and living. And I think that's what great art does in general, is that it reminds you of what it is to just be alive. And we don't live in a world that reminds us how weird and wonderful it is.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, just turning it on its head, the two highest grossing films of last year and the year before, you would not be able to tell me the directors of them.
Oh, it was the no. Was it the it was an animated film? Was it the Mario
They're
one?
both. No, it's Zootropolis 2 and Inside Out 2. Of course, they're like aimed at children.
Yeah.
So you are those films always do well. Look at the Minecraft film, look at the Mario films. Like, we're not going to go and well, actually, I did go and see both of these. I saw Zootropolis 2 and Inside Out 2.
I've not seen any of the Inside Out.
Oh my God,
and I
love
really
Inside
feel
Out.
like
It's
I
iconic.
need to.
But like, you know, of course they are going to get, because it's a, you know, everyone will, most people will take their kids to the cinema because it's a nice thing to do. But, you know, it just shows they were two of the highest grossing films and we couldn't tell you who directed them. So
yeah, that's so true.
It is interesting. It's a interesting debate, but
so many points for and against, and they're all valid, which is interesting.
I do think overall, maybe they're not. I do think actors still hold film star quality. I just think actors kind of have been there and directors have come up and kind of met them a little bit, especially the ones like we've mentioned, like Nolan, like Spielberg. Spielberg's always been iconic, same with Scorsese.
Yeah.
But,
I know. I mean, I think Scorsese's in the best part of his career, at the minute. I mean, I honestly, Justice for Killers of the Flower Moon, I loved that film. Apple TV, pop off. I mean, I saw it at the cinema, but it was just, I mean, I'll always be heading to the cinema for anything they're doing. But then again, we are film buffs, so it's obviously we will. But yeah, I mean,
and I think what another good thing, we've spoken about this in the past, when you've got that director's name, which will bring people into the cinema, I think saying that, it's probably more cinephiles that would be drawn into the cinema by a director's name. Like, for instance, some of our friends who have no interest in films but would go to the cinema, they wouldn't think, oh yeah, Christopher Nolan film, let's definitely go and see that, because they probably don't know who Christopher Nolan is. I think people who are clued up on cinema and have an interest in film, definitely. But I think for a general audience member, maybe that doesn't hold enough weight for them to kind of be named as, you know, helmed as the film stars of today. But I think when you've got that such a big name of a director, you can afford to have new faces within film. Baz Luhrmann, for instance, we just had the Met Gala. Isla Johnson, who's playing Joan of Arc in his new film, she's an unknown. She's English. She's like 17 years old, I think, maybe 18. She had her Met Gala debut, and you know, that gets people talking, gives her a bit of exposure. But because it's a Baz Luhrmann film, of course he can afford to have someone who has got about 2 credits. Of course, and that is
Austin
good because we
Butler
won.
wasn't even made his career.
Well, exactly.
Same with James Cameron. I mean,
Chase
Titanic.
Infinity, she'd been in Presumed Innocent.
I love that
was
show.
it. She'd literally been in that, and she got cast in a Paul Thomas Anderson film, and he could afford to do that and have her as the lead. Of course, he's got Leonardo DiCaprio as well, but he could have picked a well-known younger person in that film anyway.
100%.
Do you know what I mean?
Like, I mean, we've talked about this loads, haven't we, in terms of the fact that we need new, fresh faces, and I feel like there's so much talent out there that we have an industry that's a bit more, especially in America, it's a bit more secluded. But I think, I mean, even just in terms of the whole like getting people to the cinemas and what draws people to the cinemas, and there's so many different elements and reasons. It depends on the film and director and stars. There's so many different elements that go into it. I think that's a given. But I do think, I think Margot Robbie, she's interesting because she's at the helm of like this a massive, really successful production company. And I think at one point she got people into the cinemas, predominantly men, probably after The Wolf of Wall Street, and she gained a lot of traction. But she's it now, I think, given the situations that she's in, she produces a lot of what she's in, and she has such a strong finger on the pulse. I think she's another example, though she's not a director, of how behind the camera creatives can, and I know she's a star as well, but you are kind of, I think, does she get people's bums on seats because she's Margot Robbie, or it's because she's in films that she's produced and she is like always talking about how like the process of making it and this, that, and the other. Is it that thing? Is it because she's Margot Robbie and she's the star, or is it because she's got such a finger on the pulse? And that's really interesting to look at. She's a girl boss.
It is an interesting debate, but let us know your comments.
Yeah, I could go on about this. It's just so interesting.
It is interesting because there are so many different elements to it. Yeah, let us know your thoughts and what you think.
Yeah,
because I do think there's it holds some weight.
It definitely does.
Definitely.
I'm interested to see where it goes. Like if like even like the new director of Backrooms, for example, like he could be a sensation.
Exactly, Kane
so
Parsons.
He might be another one in the mix of people who are people like these new directors who are kind of coming to the forefront, and everyone's excited to watch them. So yeah,
thanks so much for watching, and we will see you in the next one. Bye.
That was really fun.